So we're here with Kathleen Lisson.
Hi.
And we have so much to talk about. But I want to talk about your book because your new book is, as always, amazing. Yes. And I was going to bring my copy because mine's got like Post-its and highlights. And I didn't bring my copy because that's how I rolled today.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what was the inspiration of your book?
So this book, Stress Reduction for Lymphedema, it's actually inspired. The very first study was one of the MLD studies in there. And I'd seen that study a couple years ago, and it was just this interesting research that found that from before and after a manual lymphatic drainage session, the person's tolerance to pain increased, and then their perception of pain decreased. So this was... it shouldn't have been groundbreaking for me, but it was really surprising to me because when you learn about manual lymphatic drainage, it's just really focused on manual lymphatic drainage takes swelling from one area of the body and moves it through the lymphatic system so you can urinate it out. And that was pretty much the bulk of what I'd ever heard about manual lymphatic drainage. It's like, which stroke direction and the whole system and why you're putting your hands on each different part of the body has to do purely with the lymphatic system and the plumbing of the lymphatic system and how to get that drop of fluid from the interstitium into the lymphatic system and then out through urination. So when I saw this first study, I was like, this is proof on a piece of paper of what I had seen in my office doing manual lymphatic drainage on people after plastic surgery. That the clients would come in and they would have this experience of, like I just had a client earlier this week that said, my doctor told me to come in right after the surgery and I delayed coming in and calling you for a couple weeks because I could not believe that someone could give me a massage and it wouldn't hurt because I was in, so much pain. And even touching your own skin, their experience of touching my own skin was painful. And it really is a combination of what happens during manual lymphatic drainage that gives it these additional that it actually helps the nervous system to reduce the signals of pain. So on client after client, like in the beginning, maybe they're a little antsy, and by the end, either they've fallen asleep or this is the most wonderful experience. So that study was kind of like in the back of my mind, and I kind of threw it out when people were talking about, I'm scared to get the massage, it's too close after surgery. I was like, oh no, like manual lymphatic drainage is proven, shown by evidence that it has these other qualities of pain reduction. And I dove more, and then just one day I was just like, I wonder if there's more out there. Like I'm just talking about this one study, and there's like a ton of studies, and it's not just pain reduction. There's all and that it's been replicated, and it also moves hormones levels are changed in the body, and you can tell whether someone has lymphedema or whether they don't have lymphedema. And so all this research was there at my fingertips, and I hadn't really heard it that much in conferences, and I hadn't ever seen it put together in one place. So I said, there's all these different studies out there where the researchers have specifically done research on people with a lymphedema diagnosis. And it has never been put together into one book so that someone with lymphedema can have access and understanding of how they can take all this research from all around the world and put it into their own self-care practices. And I was like, this is really what I need to do. This is what I need to. I need to make this project, and I wanted to take the evidence and make it in a readable form and put it all together and categorize it. So we have all a bunch of breath work and a bunch of meditation, and then the exercise, and then the community. We have different sections, and I wanted to have step by step of if you look at so first we look at the research, this is why this practice is done, this is where it's done, and then here's the step-by-step so you can try to do it yourself in your own room.
And I think the step-by-step is really easy to follow. Like I literally put myself to sleep one time.
Perfect.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and read Kathleen's book today. No, it's not a book you sit down and read. It's a book you work through and then find the things that resonate with you and help you, and then you mark those with Post-its and highlighters like I do, and then you go back to it and what, for me, I know stress is a big trigger for my lymphedema. It's a huge trigger, and everything we do is stress, and then being stressed causes stress because it's and then the pain and really allowing yourself to understand that the pain itself is stress, and that is a definition of stress, is when your body is under stress, it is in a state of pain, and being able to relieve that stress, because everything feels like it's a cycle. Like if you're stressed and you're in pain, you don't sleep. Well, if you don't sleep, you're going to be more stressed and in more pain and more swollen. So it's that whole thing, and there's so many different ways that you can break that cycle. Like, let's try this. Does this break this cycle for you? Is this something that I can resonate with and do on a daily basis? Is this, because you can have all the tools you want, but if you don't use the tools, they're no good. Even if they're the best tool in the world, you have to use it. And I think that this book really breaks down why, how, and then it allows you to be like, okay, I can see how I can work this into my daily care. I can see how I can work this in and really make this part of my practice. Or maybe it's not a daily care. Maybe it's when that thing happens and I can go, oh wait, this is feeling a little overwhelming. Let me go do some breathing right now. And really, instead of being overwhelmed and getting irritated and then getting more stressed, it's like having that tool to be like, okay, I don't need to feel this way. I know I have this thing. And if you don't remember it right away, you just grab your book and go, you know what, let's try this one. I really liked this one. Let's try this one.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I feel like I've incorporated breathing into my daily practice for years now. I mean, you and I have been talking about breathing for a long time, and that's part of I breathe during my massage. I do a lot of deep breathing things. But this is different for me. This hit different. It was like, okay, it's not just about daily maintenance. It's about those hurdles. It's about those times when I'm in extra pain or when I'm just dealing with life in general. And so it's been a real, really insightful lifesaver in my opinion. And I love how it's done. Like, let's talk about it. Here's how you do it. Let's talk about it here. This is the science behind it. Because I love to know why. Why do you want me to try that? Because I've had lymphedema for 25 years. And so over that time, I've talked to everyone. I've tried all the snake oils. I've tried all the magic waters. And I'm now to a point where I'm like, no, let's actually let's have a little bit of scientific basis in this. Like, I'm not going to put myself through all these oh, this is the cure. And this really has, you explain why we should do this and what it actually does to your nervous system so I really appreciate that about your book.
Yeah, and I think there's a certain reader, and one of them is me, that it doesn't really hit with you. Like, you've heard that this is maybe something that you should do. Like, I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, there's a lot of stress out there. Yeah, I get it. I should do stress reduction. Like, I hear it all the time. But when you really get into it and you really are able to sit down and focus on this is exactly why stress is having this impact in your body, then it kind of turns a light bulb on and you're like, oh, I get it now. And your brain is able to personalize it to you yourself.
Yeah.
And then when you do the practice, and then I say after the practices, how did that feel? And you can physically feel the change in your body.
Not only feeling the change, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think it's important, not only feeling the change, but giving yourself the moment to recognize that you feel it. Because I don't know about other people, but I feel like sometimes I get so end result driven that I don't give myself time to feel. And some of that is because I'm in pain a lot. So I just like emotions and physical pain and everything else, I kind of like it's locked away, and that's not good. That's not healthy. And so doing this and then taking the time to go, oh, I felt that. Like it does feel different. I like that. I want to replicate that feeling. And I think that's why it's important to actually take the time to ask that question, how did that feel?
Yeah.
And give yourself a moment to be honest about it. I mean, there were some that I was like, nah, I didn't really feel anything. Because it just didn't necessarily, or maybe I felt like, oh, that was too easy, or maybe I just, whatever. But others I was like, in fact, I think I texted you a couple of times. I was like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
And you were like, how'd you feel? And I was like, I cried. I didn't expect to cry. Like it hit something,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's not, stress reduction is not a one size fits all. Like there isn't, because everyone puts in a box, and I think we tell everyone just like diaphragmatic breathing. And I wanted to give like a variety of practices. So you take the ones that work for you at this time, and then you have the book, because maybe 5 years from now, maybe your next door neighbor, maybe your cousin, they have a different body and a different life experience. So like 5 years from now, the you of the future may like different practices than the you of today does. So you still have that book as a resource in your library.
And maybe the you in 6 months will like it better. Like these are all things that I think we should revisit and give ourselves an opportunity to feel and decide hey body, how did that feel? Did you like that? Should we do it again?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have to. Oh, I really like this. We should do that again. And I think that's a lot of really being in tune to our bodies. I think that is something that's really important for stress relief as well. Is allowing yourself to not like everything that everybody tells you to do, and allow yourself to find the things. But there are so many different techniques in this book. Like so many different techniques. I really thought, I was like, oh, I'll get through this in a couple days, but no, because like I'm doing them as I go. And I'm like, oh my God, like, oh wait, here's my little post-it. Like I want to come back to this one. This is good. And so I really
want it to be like a class in doing it, that you can go as deep as you want.
It's a very hands-on book. It's it gives you the time to think about it, and then the time to practice it and feel it and decide. And then it's like, if not, then go to the next one, because there's a next one and a next one.
And you can go back and try them at a later time, or just pick the ones that you want. What I really also liked was I wanted to put a chapter in the very beginning to talk about the stress of the lived experience of people with lymphedema, because I think that it really struck me a couple years ago when you said that you were the only person that you'd ever met in real life, or another person meeting you. You were the only person that they ever met in real life that had primary lymphedema, the same presentation as them. And I think it's primary lymphedema extremely isolating. You think you're the only one, and for a lot of our pain, it's almost a universal experience of being human, that for a lot of our pain, we think we're the only ones. So it's important to know that not only is there stress with lymphedema, it's been noted in research in the published literature. So if there's maybe somebody that won't listen to what's coming out of your mouth, that they will listen to a study, that there is research there, and I cited that research. And it's important for the person with lymphedema to know that lymphedema causes stress. The experience of having lymphedema causes stress. And then also for the loved one or the family member, if this is a new diagnosis, for the family to be able to read that chapter and really get what's going on.
I think for me, I've lived a lot of time masking things because I'm too tough to succumb to this. And so then when you mask this, even your family that love you and care about you, they're like, oh, she's fine. She's fine. And then at the end of the day, when I literally have zero energy left, it's like, well, if you're so tired, why didn't you stop earlier? And it's like, because there's so many things to do, you know? And I think reading that chapter really touched me in a way that it was like giving myself permission to admit that, you know what, my body goes through a lot.
Yeah.
And just like allowing that to be okay, giving myself space to live the human experience that my body's happening to live. And especially right now, because I'm like in a flare-up, and I'm not loving the body that I'm in right now. You know, and it's like, okay, but you know what? It's still keeping me here. I've gotten through 100% of my flare-ups in the past. I'm going to get through this one, you know. We're going to get through this. And I have all these amazing tools now. I have like an amazing network, and, you know, and I think that's the thing that I want people to know, is that they're not alone. Because that is a terrible place to be, to like think that you're being a baby. Well, your leg's a little swollen. We all swell. Like, it's hot out. Of course you're swollen. We're all swollen. I hate when people tell me that. It's like, oh, you're swollen. You have no idea. Nor do you have to put on this really thick medical compression garment that I wear every day. That I love.
Thanks, Juzo.
But yes, you know, it's a real thing. It's real life. And so that's, I think, this everything you do is just golden. Like, I'm probably one of your biggest fans, so I may be a bit biased, but out of all the things you've done, like, it just keeps getting better and better. And this, I feel, every single therapist needs to read it. Every single family member needs to read it. Every single person that's struggling with lymphedema or any kind of lymphatic issues. This is literally a must-have. I've shown my husband. I'm like, you should read this. Look at this, and he's like, oh, really? Like, you know, it starts a dialogue. It starts a conversation. And it allows. Hey, this is like a paper. It's not just I saying that I'm tired, or I'm saying that I'm having this chronic fatigue and pain. It's something that's been published, and somehow that makes it easier for people to believe. You know?
And the evidence of the research is hundreds of people. It's not just the experience of one person.
And I just want everyone that's watching to know that this little guy here did not love me when I walked in the door, and I just want you to see that he loves me now. That's all. It needs to be said. It needs to be said.
Well, I like to include my dog, because I included petting animals is a form of stress relief. And I think there's a lot of formal practices, but also in a later chapter in the book, there's a lot of things that we can use by the experience of the world with our senses for stress reduction. Aromatherapy, the rocking chair, like we know to rock babies soothes them. The rocking movement soothes adults as well.
I have a patio swing that I like. When it's not as hot as it is right now out, I'm on that thing all the time. I love, that's my spot.
So there's a lot of really formal, like science-based, but then there's also like, what would your grandma do kind of advice. And I think that's equally as meaningful, because there's now research behind it. A lot of like taking a walk, having a multi-sensory experience, time in nature, laughter yoga, petting your pet, aromatherapy, all the things that maybe we discount because there's not a prescription and we didn't get it from a pharmacist. That's still a really potent way to reduce stress. And if that's one that's going to be in your life every day, like our little dog is very much helping with our stress with our family. Animals can really be a gift to us, because they give us this unconditional love. And there's a loving kindness meditation in the book, and the first minute of the meditation is think of a pet or someone that's easy to love, and then you say affirmations towards them. So even the thought of a pet or someone that loves you is able to give those emotions to you that will reduce stress. And the final really interesting thing that we're just really focusing on as lymphedema therapists now, particularly in the last like 3 to 6 months, is the central lymphatic system. Like the deep lymphatics, the lymphatics of the trunk, the fact that you can have lymphedema in your abdomen, and that backup into the abdomen is a real thing, and there's surgeries, and we're talking amongst ourselves about therapies, and a lot of what we talk about is that deep diaphragmatic breathing, that movement of the diaphragm. And I really wanted to focus the breath work chapter on giving you a lot of different ways to practice breathing that moves the diaphragm. And it's very interesting to me that in America we kind of just say, like, take some deep breaths. But around the world, there's this research, this breathwork of pranayama practices, like alternate nostril breathing, Bhastrika breath, Om chanting, and this different types of breathing that are used in lymphedema protocols in different parts of the world that I believe we can definitely see if they're appropriate for us and include in our protocols here. And I've started to make like little 15-minute videos, different breathwork practices where we kind of put them all together, and the explanations for the practices are in the book. So if you wanted to understand why you're doing the breathing that you're doing, but I think that is going to be really valuable to people, especially if you're doing your own self-MLD by hand or you're in a lymphedema pump, that you can have this thing where you're doing your self-MLD or you're in your lymphedema pump, and boop, you just press play on the YouTube, and Kathleen's voice guides you through this 15 minutes of different breathwork practices that you learned from the book. And then that's a way the easiest way that I can think of that you can include the breathing.
Yeah. Because
just only take 10 deep breaths, it gets super boring, and then you're not going to do it.
A long time ago, you told me to do deep breathing while I was doing my self massage, and I do that.
Yeah.
And it's made the world of difference in my self massage. It's like, because I'm sure I'm the only one, and you guys don't do this, but sometimes I get lazy with my self massage because, and that makes me A, be intentional, and B, really think, okay, like, it really makes me focus on my abdomen, which is, something that the compression garments don't help. Like, if it's my massage, that's kind of all I've got.
Yes.
So it's really made a big difference, and I love that you brought that to the book, and I like the YouTube idea. Like, I'll listen to Kathleen and do it instead of like doing it in my head. So yeah.
Yeah, because I think and I put the research again for the people who are really really able to focus on something. If they know the research behind it, there's so much interesting research with the fact that the nervous system innervates the lymphatic system, and the lymphatic system underneath the diaphragm can be moved, and the fluid in those lymph nodes can be pushed into the venous system if you're moving that diaphragm, and the diaphragm is changing the pressures above the diaphragm and below the diaphragm. So as we move that muscle, as we're breathing, it's like nature's way of moving that lymphatic fluid from the trunk into the circulatory system.
I always say that we take breathing for granted because you have to breathe to live, but when you breathe with an intention and you breathe in breathe in your deep down, and your shoulders don't need to move. Your shoulders, you should be breathing down in here, not with your lungs, like breathing deep. That is moving your lymphatic system. It's moving all those things, and I love that you've got all the science behind that, because it's true. It's we have to breathe anyway, so why don't we do it with some intention and actually see some results while we're doing it? Because it's not just the relieving of the stress. It's actually helping move the problem. It's actually helping not just the stress, but it's helping everything.
Yeah. So I wrote the book, and I think it's a really great resource for the lymphedema therapist to be able to give to a client, give the name of the book and say, hey, you can buy this on Amazon. You can get it in Kindle, or you can get it in a paperback. In answer to the question, like, what kind of breathing should I be doing? Why is it important for stress reduction? And I had a client less than 2 weeks ago, a lymphedema client, that looked at me and said, like, is meditation, like, useful for lymphedema. And I was so happy that like this time last year I would have just been like, yes, but there's only so much we can communicate in the massage session about it. And I'm so happy that at this point I'm able to be like, yes, and like here's a book that is going to give you not only the explanations but the step-by-step tools that you need, and more than one example for each category, so you pick the one that you like best at this time. And it's also a book you can share with your family. So like a lot of cultures are like the whole family is going to rally around the person that has lymphedema. So it could be your sister, your aunt, your son, your daughter, your husband is going to be like, hey, let's pick a practice. Like, let's open up the book randomly and pick a practice and let's do it together so we can help reduce your stress from lymphedema as a family. Because I don't have to tell you, but lymphedema doesn't just affect one person, the person who has it, it affects the whole family. And the stress, especially if, the lymphedema is long-standing, the lymphedema has interruptions to activities of daily living, it's affecting the health-related quality of life of the person. If it's after cancer and they've gone through this cancer diagnosis and treatment, and now there's lymphedema, which is a chronic progressive disease that doesn't have a cure, that the whole family is feeling the stress. And these practices are a way that the whole family can get stress reduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Get the book. That's all I can say. It's thank you for doing this, because I think all of your things are amazing, but right now I would have to say this is on the top of my list of what is really, like, every single page is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.